Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN, of whom more in a bit. Alright, today we're going to look at another of those tube lines that never got built. And this one is, well, it's a curiosity alright. It's kind of an ancestor of the Jubilee line, the Overground, and the Elizabeth line. But also none of those things. It's another of those ideas from the London Plan Working Party report of 1949. To briefly recap, the London Plan Working Party was a committee set up to look at the possibilities for transport in London in the post-World War II era. There was a sense of cautious optimism following the end of the war and a desire to rebuild. The County of London Plan, devised in 1943 and published in 1946, was part of this. To some extent it was a propaganda exercise, to show the people that the hardships of the war had been worth it. The London Plan Working Party was intended to take the recommendations of the report and see which were practical and desirable. Off the back of this, they came up with a plan for several new railway routes lettered A through M. I've talked about routes A and B already. I'm skipping over route C for now. That's going to be part of a longer video, and that brings us to Route D. Now, Route D was to be built in two sections. The first would be from Chingford and Enfield town to Hackney Downs, using the already existing railway lines, part of what's now the Weaver line of the London Overground. At Hackney Downs there would be a brand new tube line. This would run to Liverpool Street, then on to Bank, Ludgate Circus, Aldwych, Trafalgar Square, Westminster and Victoria. After that, things got a little bit speculative. After Victoria, it was intended to go on into the west, but this was always considered to be a lower priority work. On the subject of speculation, who's profiling you right now? Online security is a bigger issue than ever before, with governments and corporations getting ever more brazen about their disregard for your online privacy. Frankly, it's just rude. That's why I'm glad that this video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Surfshark gives you a layer of extra protection online thanks to its advanced encryption, protecting you from these scoundrels. All this online stuff is a little bit mysterious to me. I'm a train guy. But the important thing is that I'm safer online now that I use Surfshark. Actually, no. The important thing is that Surfshark has servers you can connect to in over 100 other countries. Get other countries' streaming services? Yes, please. Region-specific bargains when online shopping? I don't mind if I do. Avoid government censorship and region locks? What an excellent idea. Sometimes people ask me if they can use Surfshark on an unlimited number of devices. Well, they don't literally ask me that, but I can tell that that's what they're thinking. Anyway, yes, they can. They can do that. The other thing people say to me is, well, Jago, if you know so much about Surfshark, how do I get 4 months extra free? To those people, I say, what you have to do is scan this QR code, or follow the link in the description, and let me tell you, you can definitely get 4 months extra free that way. I feel safer already. There's only one question remaining, and that's, what happens after Victoria? The route the report suggests as a possibility is from Victoria on to Knightsbridge, Albert Hall, Kensington High Street, Olympia, Goldhawk Road, and then to follow the Uxbridge Road to Yeading Lane. The stations along the way would have been Askew Arms, Horn Lane, Ealing Common, Ealing Broadway, West Ealing, Hanwell Broadway, Southall Broadway, and finally Yeading Lane. I would guess about here where this hotel is now. The aims of this line were to solve two major problems: the poor service on the Chingford and Enfield town lines, and the overcrowded trains in central London. In northeast London, the Cheshunt and Chingford lines were in a pretty deplorable state. They were considered to have a lot of potential, but at the same time they were not meeting this, for a couple of reasons. One, they needed electrification. They were owned by the London and North Eastern Railway, which had no money for basically anything, So electrification had been postponed and postponed. And 2, they fed into the lines into Liverpool Street, which were very busy. The new tube line from Hackney would have bypassed the worst of this. In central London, a need was identified for a new line between the West End and the City, the central line no longer being able to handle the number of passengers using it. In the County of London plan, a version of this, known as Route 9, had been planned, which would have basically duplicated the central line through Holborn and St Paul's. The Working Party thought it made more sense to move this further south along the alignment of Fleet Street. Route 9 had originally been planned to terminate at Rains Park in southwest London, but the Working Party planned for Route E to do this instead, hence their uncertainty as to where Route D should come out in the west. Now, I'm calling this a tube line, and indeed they refer to it as such in the report, but they specify a 17-foot diameter tunnel, which is large enough to take main line stock. This suggests to me that it probably would have been something more akin to the Elizabeth line or Thameslink than a deep-level tube line. Of course, this line didn't get built. I mean, none of these lines really did, technically. But some of them did see the light of day in a modified form. Route A was basically a more elaborate version of Thameslink. Route C was an early prototype of the Victoria line. Did anything like that happen with Route D? Well, yes and no. Obviously, the lines to Enfield Town and Chingford, and indeed Cheshunt, did get electrified. But rather than feeding into a new underground railway, they became part of the overground. The line to the east that did get fed into a new underground railway was the service to Shenfield via the Elizabeth line. Speaking of the Elizabeth line, the speculative bit in the west is interesting. While it doesn't directly follow the route of the Elizabeth line, it does serve a number of the same places: Acton, Ealing, Hanwell and Southall. Yeading Lane is in Hayes, as in Hayes and Harlington. One of the biggest sources of delays on the Elizabeth line is the fact that it shares track with the busy main lines into Paddington. We might speculate that the report's version of history gave us a more reliable line to the west. I mean, apart from the obvious possibility of confusion between getting a train from Ealing to Reading and Ealing to Yeading. Unfortunately, the plan doesn't specify why they picked this route, so I don't know if they were thinking in terms of taking traffic off the line into Paddington or what. But it's the bit in the middle that really caught my eye. In particular, the section that goes Ludgate Circus, Aldwych, Trafalgar Square, because that is exactly the route that was taken by the Jubilee line, or rather, an early version of the Jubilee line. Let me explain. The Jubilee line started out as a concept known as the Fleet line. This had very little in common with Route D except for its central section. It was a deep-level tube rather than a main line route. It was to take over the Bakerloo line from Stanmore to Baker Street, then to have a new section of line from there to Charing Cross, or, as some versions of the plan had it, Trafalgar Square. That was Stage 1. Stage 2 would have gone from Charing Cross to Fenchurch Street. The first station would have connected with the Piccadilly line at Aldwych. Then there would have been a new station at Ludgate Circus. From there on to Cannon Street and Fenchurch Street. Cannon Street is not Bank, but it is close. This seems very similar to part of Route D. It deviates at both ends, but the concept of a West End to City line via Fleet Street seems like more than coincidence. So it appears that the planners of the Jubilee line did have the Working Party plan in mind when they devised Stage 2. Stage 3, incidentally, would have had nothing to do with Route D. It would have gone east either to Lewisham and Hayes, not to be confused with the Hayes near Yeading Lane, or to Thamesmead. But the Jubilee line's second stage did not, in fact, go to Aldwych or Ludgate Circus or any of those places. The second stage didn't open until 1999, half a century after the Working Party report was published. It would abandon the part of the line that ran into Charing Cross and instead head south of the river via Waterloo, London Bridge and onto the Docklands. So we have a weird situation. Route D led to the Jubilee line. But also, it didn't. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this self-contradictory tale from the tube. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon, and here on YouTube for your support. You are the theoretical extension to my theoretical line. I'd also like to thank Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Click on the link in the description below or use this QR code to take advantage of their generous offer. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.